Archers are in a very good place in Rise of Kingdoms right now, going into November of 2025. And the reason why is because of this guy. Chen has completely changed archers for the field. Things have completely changed. We'll go through all that. This is going to be the guide that's going to put a tier list together for one of the best archer marches. And I run archers now. I'm back to running those again after I did for so many years and then took a break and only ran one march, but now I'm back to running 2 and looking at 3 and 4. You know, what are players going to look at? We're going to give you all those different combinations. We're going to go through all the different things that they do. We're going to give you some things that you might not think about. So stick around while we talk all about the little archers prancing around. Hey everybody, I'm your boy War Daddy Chadsky. I put out videos all the time and I love doing this content. You guys know me. And with that, if you enjoy this content, throw a thumbs up, give it a like, put a comment down in the comments section. I love interacting with people down there. You can see any one of my videos. I love answering questions down there. And if you want to join the community that we have, you can join my Discord. The link is in the description. This is where a lot of these conversations come into play. And if you haven't subscribed, consider doing so. It doesn't cost you anything. Just hit that subscribe button. Helps out the channel a ton. We're approaching 60,000 subscribers. And you can hit that bell for any kind of notifications for any kind of content like this. This video is one that I would have hated to do a year ago. In fact, when I first started my channel, about a year ago this time, my very first video I ever did was the title of it was, "Are Archers Unplayable?" Because people in dot mode, they were using icons, they were targeting archers. There was no tankiness with archers. There was no prickliness with archers. And what happened? Well, you got more into 2025 and you got into the summer months, and then all of a sudden they released this guy. And he changed the game completely changed the game. You can't just go focus archers anymore because this sumbitch is the tankiest thing you've ever seen. Okay, his 4 skill is the tankiest skill in the game. All right, I run him with Shajar in my canyon, and I just absolutely crush it because you can't kill it. It's unbelievable. This thing is so tanky. And so from that standpoint, we're in a situation to where you can't just go focus archers, because if you go focus a Chen, it's going to take forever to kill that thing. Okay, even though you want to get him off the field because he's doing so much damage, he's got a weird rage consumption situation going on with his skills. The bottom line, he just does a ton of damage, and he gives you all kinds of options to run, and he revives old commanders like YSG. And so let me kind of show you why this guy is off the charts good. I'm going to put up a DPS graph. Okay, these are the biggest DPS marches in the game. Okay, and at the very top, it's Chen YSG and Chen Zuge. I guarantee you if we put Chen Ash in here or Chen Herman, it'd be the same thing. Massive damage. Nobody can touch this guy. He is at the top. Okay, when it comes to Chen, this dude right now today is the only dude in the game I say stop what you're doing and instant max him. Get him max as fast as possible. If you can't, try to get him 1-5-5-1. If you can't put something into him, you can put it into his second skill and his 4th skill. You can 1-5-1-5 this thing. Just get this guy on the field because he will carry anything. He'll carry bad gear. He'll carry old commanders. He'll carry anything. So he is the best in the game in field fighting. The absolute best. We just got Achilles. Achilles is actually running up so much damage that it's kind of getting close, but it's still not there. Like, Chen is going to be in the game for a long time. You can do a lot of different things with him, but now you're in a situation where archers are playable. Now you're putting so much damage on it. Now people are targeting calves more. They're trying to get Arthur off the field. They're trying to get some of these Huos off the field that do so much damage. Now archers are playable. We can actually play with these guys. And so they do a ton of damage. They're still squishy. They're still slow. But there's ways you can make them faster. There's ways you can use them for buffing marches. There's all kinds of things that you can do. So let's get into it, shall we? I'm going to put up this. Let me see here. Make sure I've got this thing right. We'll put this thing up. This is my tier list. This is an Archer March tier list, okay? And it's not going to be any surprise, if anybody understands this or knows about it, it's not going to be any surprise that Chen is a part of the let's just put it this way. Chen is a part of like all the good things, okay? Because when you come to this tier list and you look at it, let me pull it up. We can pull this march up here, Chen YSG. Chen has revived YSG. We've talked about it many, many times. Let me just give you a quick refresher. Chen does skill damage. He converts skill damage. He converts basic attack into skill damage every second. It's just red numbers every second. So you want to ramp up the skill damage as fast as possible. Well, between YSG's museum buff that gives you 12% more skill damage and his fourth skill that gives you a perpetual 50% skill damage bonus, he is amazing with Chen. Absolutely amazing. He's rejuvenated. He's back in the game. One of the best invested commanders over the last 5 years. He's so old and it don't matter because we're going to go run this thing. And so I've got Chen and YSG up here. Now you can put these just on your preference in any order that you want, but these two are the top two. You're going to get the most damage out of these two. You get rage out of these two. They're kind of a mirror image of each other. This march here with Chen and YSG typically does this march here with Chen and YSG typically does a little bit more damage. The march with Chen and Zuge is a little bit more utility, a little tankier. Plus, you got Zuge's debuff he does on the targets to where they don't, on his AoE, the targets you hit with the AoE don't do as much damage. Okay, and so that's a little debuff and it helps. So a little more utility from here. Just whichever way you want to run this. A lot of people like to run YSG behind. A lot of people like to run Chen behind. So whichever way you want to do it, those are the two best marches you could run. And at that S tier, I'm also going to put Chen with our boy Hector. I'm going to put Chen with Shajar. I'm going to put Chen with Philip. All Chens are S tier because it's just that powerful, y'all. Chen with Hector might be something pretty interesting. Hector's got the buff of 30% skill damage. He does big damage behind. He does a cool rage mitigation from his active skill on debuffs on the target, and he just does really cool things when it comes to being an archer commander, if you will. Because if you put him behind Chen, he is an archer commander. Now, not everybody's going to have Hector. I get it, guys. Not everybody needs to go invest in Hector, but if you got him, you can put him behind Chen, okay? Chen Shajar, people absolutely love this march. They love it in the altar. It lasts forever. It gets you a crazy report. Shajar does a bunch of healing. Shajar's also got some sneaky buffs that she does we'll talk about later, but Chen Shajar, if you want to put this up here, that's fine. And then you got Chen Philip. Anybody that hadn't run Chen Philip, try it. It's awesome. It's really, really good. Of course, Chen is going to carry anybody. You can put Chen Herman up here. You can put Chen Ash up here. It don't matter. Like, it's amazing what this guy does. With Philip, you got the extra procs from Philip's proc active skills, either from Chen or Philip, and you're firing off every 4 to 5 seconds. I mean, it's just crazy. So you could run this really either way with these three. These three are pretty even as far as how you want to run it. Just they do different things. And then these two at the top are what you want. That's your S tier for your archer marches. Okay, let's go into the A tier, shall we? This is the Zuge tier, if you will. I would put Zuge Herman up here. I'd put Zuge Philip up here. And now I would put Zuge Hector up here, okay? One thing we didn't talk about with Hector, he is big damage. He has big skill damage. And so when he does his damage, it helps kill anything you're trying to hit. But a lot of people will say Zuge Philip is better than Zuge Herman. They get better results out of there, out of Philip. And if you kind of use a two troop trick that you can do when you're leaving your city, you can just put like one T1 cab in this march of Zuge and Philip, and it gets to the fight super fast. Philip does extra march speed if he's got an extra troop type. And so a T1 cab is going to get you to the fight very, very fast. These are kind of faster marches. They really, really help out. This march is a little bit slower. Zuge gives some march speed. Shajar gives march speed. Philip gets march speed. That's why the Chen Philip is a really, really popular thing that players are finding more and more out about. And so from that, that's kind of your Chen list. I like running Herman because I like putting my Philip somewhere else, but you can run these however you want. Okay, you can run them however you want, and that's how that plays into it. Now we're going to get down into the B tier. This is where Herman kind of comes into play with Philip. I love that March. Probably my favorite March in the B tier is an Ash Herman situation. Still does great damage. Ash 5-target AoE, good. Herman throws down the stacks of poison. You can also easily put Ash with Zuge in this realm here. And then this is where it gets kind of fun, okay? Because depending on how well this does might depend on how we rank it out in the future. Shajar with Hector. Hold on, y'all. Just hold on. I've got to talk about this. If we've got Shajar with Hector, let's take this down, okay? Shajar, obviously, as a primary commander, does 2,800 damage factor. Bunch of damage factor. It's single target. Okay, so a Shajar Hector March is gonna be a March killer, right? It's a single target, big time damage they put on it. But Shajar also has a mighty healing factor. And whenever you use an active skill, you heal 3 nearby enemy or friendly troops. Okay, the cooldown's on 3 seconds. So this fires off every skill cycle, right? That's not the part of this. Because as a primary commander, she is a skill damage commander, and as a secondary, she is a healing commander. So you put her primary, but you still get healing here. Because it doesn't matter how much healing it is, this is where this works. Whenever you take healing, for the next 3 seconds, the healed troops gain 10% defense, which is great, 10% defense, but you deal 20% more normal damage. Okay, this is the reason why I've always said Shajar is trash, first of all, but the more combo commanders we get, the more smite commanders we get, the more this skill right here really helps. Because if this fires off and lands on an Arthur Achilles March or lands on a BQ Luce March, you're basically giving them 20% all damage for 3 seconds. It's a great buff, an absolute great buff that you could do for your combo and your smite. That's why that's really an interesting combination, because it's kind of a March killer. It's going to do big damage on the single target because there's no AoE attached to that. And then at the same time, it does some cool buffing. So that's one thing that we can look for in the Shajar with Hector situation. And just because Zuge is still really powerful, I put him up here in the B category. You can run a Shajar with Zuge behind. I've seen a lot of people do that, and that's how that works. So at the C category, you're going to see some YSG stuff in here, but Shajar Ash, you can put him here. Herman YSG here, Ash YSG. If you are in a situation to where you want to look at putting YSG behind something other than Chen. Okay, so that's your tier list. Take a snapshot of that. People can argue with that. You can put things, move them around if you want. That's what I would go with. I didn't include Nebu. I didn't include Cyrus. A bunch of commanders I didn't include for archers because you're just not going to run those. Okay, most players run 1 or 2 archer marches. Some of you archer simps and freaks out there run 3. Some of you psychopaths run 4. And so that's what we're going to look at right now. So from there, let's go in here and look at our March combinations, okay? Let me pull this down real quick, and we're going to make this, we're going to call this Archer Selection. And then we're going to go with it, okay? So Archer Selection, you got 1 March, 2 March, 3 March, 4 March. And I should label that 4th March or the 4 March like a psycho situation because it's just like, what? So first and foremost, the best 1 March you could run, just stick with this right here. Chen with YSG or Chen with Zuge. I don't care how you run it, but it's just one of those two. Let me come down here and give the crops. That way it's a little bigger. Chen with YSG or Chen with Zuge. That's how you run 1 March. It's easy. It's really easy. And I know some of you who might have had Zuge and Herman and now you have Chen, you're probably going to run them with Zuge because the thought of like leaving Zuge and Herman on the bench when you run 1 Archer March is just like gross. But however you want to run it, that's your 1 March, and there's no argument there. Like everybody, that is a universal fact in Rise of Kingdoms. You run Chen with YSG, you run Chen with Zuge. You can run Chen with Shajar if you're doing an altar fight and you want to last and stay there as long as possible. So that's your 1 March setup. Your 2 March setup, something I love, and the reason why Chen is so important, he makes it to where you can run Chen YSG, and then you can move Zuge with Herman. Love that march. That's the setup I use. Chen with YSG, Zuge, and Herman. Tons of damage. You got to watch your Zuge and Herman. It'll get targeted and it'll get beat up pretty good. But if you can stay and play the way that it needs to play with archers, that still does massive damage and a great job. Some players really like using Zuge with Philip. They think that's better than Herman. Sometimes I get frustrated because I won't trade as well, but my play style is not great for archers. So I'll put Philip behind Zuge, and it's a little tankier, it's a little faster, and that's what I like to do. But for this, we'll just leave this there for 2 marches. I don't think you could go wrong at all with a Chen march and a Zuge march for your 2 marches, okay? So now we come into 3 marches, and again, Chen with YSG. This gets YSG on the field. One of the best, if not the best march in the game with Chen YSG. From there, you got to bring Philip into the fold because we're going to run an Ash with Herman. Okay, that's how I would set up for 3 marches for archers. That's how I would do it. You can include a couple of things here. We got some Hector stuff to talk about when it comes to this. I didn't necessarily include Hector in a lot of the tiered list type of thing, but with your marches, you can look at Hector in a couple of different ways. But this is how I would like to run this. That's how I'd like to run it. That's how I'd like to do it. Now, if you wanted to do like something different, like I don't know, like a Zuge with Shajar, something like this, and you could put a Herman or a Herman Philip there, or you could do some different things with that. So that's how I would run your 3 march setup. Pretty easy. Philip is a great person you can put over there with that. You can do some other things where you can put a Hector here. Again, not a lot of archer players are going to have Hector. There's no reason to get Hector. We found that he's more of an infantry garrison, and only really high-end infantry players are probably going to invest in him, and whales and krakens and things like that. But for normal players, yeah, you ain't messing with that. So you can just put him back down here. So there's your 3 march setup. That's how I would do it. Okay, now you psychos out there that want to run 4 archer marches, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? First and foremost, Chen YSG makes it easy, right? Makes YSG super powerful. You put it behind Chen, it's great. I think from there, you run the Zuge with Philip. I think from there, you run the Ash Herman. And then what I would do is run the Shajar with Hector. That's how I would run that. Okay, there's a couple other things you can do. If you don't have Hector and you really, really want to go run this, you can do it a couple of different ways. You could run like, oh gosh, you could run like a Shajar with... You could run like a Shajar with Ash if you don't have Hector. But then what do you do with this Ash? Well, then maybe you run Herman with YSG. And then, well, what do you do with that? Well, then maybe you run, I don't know, you run Chen with Hector. I mean, there's all kinds. You run Chen with Hector over here. There's all kinds of different ways you can do that. I think that this is probably the best way I would want to run this, Shajar with Hector, or you could go even Shajar Henry, or if you are an archer. If you got 4 archer marches, you're probably an archer main, and you probably have Shapur. So you can literally put Shapur with Shajar, and there's a few things that you can do with Shapur in a Hector situation. So you can run 4 marches much more conceivably than you could 6 months ago or 8 months ago before Chen came out. And again, I don't mind Shajar in the field near as often, because I think a Chen Shajar march for 1 march and an altar is great. I think Shajar with Hector is really, really good. I think a Shajar with Philip can be really, really good as a buffing march, because we now have more combos and more smite commanders. And with new infantry coming in January, a whole lot of players might be adding 2 smite marches on their infantry and no skill damage. So the less skill damage you do, the more important Shajar gets, the less important Herman gets. And I think we all understand that. Herman's got the poison stacks. They ramp up a debuff of skill damage taken. So the less skill damage marches you run, the less valuable Herman is. It's that simple. And so that's kind of how I would run this if you're running 4 marches. So that gives us an idea. Archers are in a really good place right now, y'all. They're in a really good place. There's cool things you can do with them. Easily being able to run 2 marches. A lot of players coming into SOC don't get a chance to have a whole bunch of archer marches. They might have YSG coming from K1 and K2. But outside of that, what do they have? Thutmose? El Cid? That's kind of what they're working with. Well, Chen is the first thing you got to get. It's like the first thing you got to get. You don't even have to have him maxed. 1551, 1515, however you want to run it. And you can make him work, okay? So as long as you've got a YSG or a Zuge sitting behind the chin, does not even have to be maxed, but you want to work on it as fast as possible. And so from there, that's how this works out. You new players that are coming into SOC, you want one good Archer March. Make sure you've got something you can run with chin. And if you go invest in like Phillip, and you know you're going to use Phillip and move him around and do different things with him as you grow your marches, then go get Phillip and just put him behind chin and work on chin as fast as you can. There's all kinds of ways you can do that. If you are a new player or you're budgeting and you're growing your account, you're getting into Season of Conquest, you're getting out of K2 and going into K3 and 4, that's how you can do it. You can budget this guy and go do that. So if you all enjoyed this video, throw a thumbs up on here, give it a like. If you are not subscribed, like I said, consider doing so. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell if you want to get alerts when I put out this kind of content. That's for you, Archers. I love you guys. I took so much stick for such a long time about how much I hated Archers. I didn't. I just hated playing with them. And until Chin came out, I didn't like it. Chin's here, changes the game. Completely changes the game. And so you know I'm not biased towards Cavalry. That's kind of what I like to play. But I'm going to be pretty honest about this. Chin, absolute must-have. Right now for me, the only commander where I would tell people to stop what you're doing, go max this guy. So with all that, I hope you all have a great day, broskies.